We're out of Washington, D.C. I work out of the Chicago office, but I actually live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I have coached after-school programs, 54 of them actually in Milwaukee for 4 years. So I have a great appreciation and awareness of what you do. So thank you very much. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is really complementary to a lot of what Corinne has been talking about. But I'm going to be focusing on the youth development overview, some social and emotional competencies, and then some different pathways that support social and emotional learning. First of all, you have received, you should have received one youth development checklist, and there's also another form that's online, and this is where it came from. Is a suite of tools that AIR has evolved. So you see where they came from. Becky just went through a training with AIR, and it really supports after-school programming from agency. So that's where that came from. So youth development. So building a strong foundation to support positive youth outcomes. So when you think of youth development, what do you think? When you think of youth development, how would you describe youth development? Do you have a clear understanding of what it means or what the expectations are to provide positive youth development? So in your programming, what might you do to support positive youth development? Yep, absolutely. Safe environment. Wonderful. Building relationships. Anything else that comes to mind? Positive engagement. Yep, definitely. Choice. Yes. May I ask you, how often do you think about positive youth development in your after-school programs? Is it something that you consciously think about, or that you just kind of do organically? It's probably something that you do organically. You probably do every day. So what I'd like to do is just really focus on that today, because positive youth development is really the foundation for social and emotional learning. We're looking at positive youth development. Researchers Hamilton and Hamilton, they describe it as a theory, a natural process of human development, and an intended outcome, which gives us some information, but not a lot of specifics. So youth development frameworks, there are quite a few out there, but here are some common elements for youth development frameworks. They need to be available to all youth, meaning they're universal. It needs to be a program that's building upon strengths of youth. It needs to be asset-based. It needs to foster positive growth in youth, address developmental needs, anchored in collaborations, as Corinne was saying, with the community and with the families and schools, and reflecting the community and culture of the participants. These are all elements that are included in youth development frameworks. So here are some common youth development frameworks. Research Institute's developmental assets, 5 C's of positive youth development, community action framework for youth development. Has anyone ever heard of any of these? A few of you? Yep. So today we're going to be looking at a very recognized approach to youth development that comes from the Weikart Center for Youth Program Quality. So here's a nice overview. So let's take a look at this. Let's look at the base of this pyramid. We have safe environment. Safe environment includes a physical and psychological safety. You have to have emergency procedures, healthy food and drinks. So what does this remind you of? What does this remind you of? Has anybody been aware of or been exposed to Maslow's theory? Right. So in order for us to build a good quality, a high quality youth program, we need to have the basics. So the basics of a safe environment And then as we move up, we build on that safe environment. The next area is supportive environment. We have encouragement, skill building, active engagement, reframing conflict, session flow, and welcoming atmosphere. And if you've got that down, then you can really delve into the peer interaction with leading and mentoring, youth being in small groups, partnering with adults, and experiencing that feeling of belonging. And finally, at the very top, is what we're really focusing on and pushing for, is that youth engagement. Where youth are really engaged in your program, they like your program, they feel safe in your program, they're interacting with their peers, and at this level, you're also asking them to plan, make choices, reflect. They really feel ownership of your program. So beyond the bell, the tool that you have is it provides a tool for staff to assess whether a program exhibits strong youth development principles and practices, and where principles and practices could be improved. So this checklist supports many of the elements from the Wyckoff Center for Youth Program Quality. The checklist includes providing a warm and welcoming environment, supporting positive behavior, building supportive relationships, opportunities for youth to belong, opportunities for youth choice, decision-making and leadership, opportunities for reflection, and opportunities for learning and skill development. What I'd like you to do is to look through this checklist. It's a two-page checklist. And I'd like you to, you can either check off where you're at, and take a few minutes and look at what are you doing well, what's in process, and where are areas that you need some support. Okay? So take a few minutes and really take a look at it. Instead of just talking about positive youth development, this is a nice checklist that can guide us to better supporting our youth in this area. So take a few minutes. Check out where you're at. Thank you. You didn't pick one up apparently there. Talk with your neighbors for a few minutes, please. Kind of review where your strengths are and where you have some challenges. Turn and talk, share anything that was surprising. I have questions. And I just like some feedback from you and some reflection on what you found. First of all, did you notice that the checklist kind of falls on that continuum from what's kind of easy to implement, like a warm and welcoming environment and support for positive behavior, is fairly easy to implement. And then we go to supportive relationships and opportunities for youth choice, decision-making, leadership, and reflection. Those are kind of higher up on the pyramid. But what did you think about this? Did you find yourself on here pretty easily? Was it easy to pinpoint what you were doing well and areas that you had some challenges? Yep. What are you doing well right now?
We were talking about how a lot of our staff is teachers, so we have that relationship with students. Like I teach kindergarten, but when I go to the after-school program, I get to interact with the 4th grade and the 3rd grade. So when I see them in the hallway, I have that connection with them and being able to address them by their name and being able to connect with them that way.
Definitely. And you think that helps them to feel like they belong? Absolutely. If you call a youth by their name, they feel like you know them and that you care about them too.
I think it helps with the parents also knowing that they know all of us. And we're in a small school, so knowing that they're done with school, but they're still with the teachers and the people that they're close to.
Right, right. So they have that confidence in you, right? And so that opportunity to belong, that extends to the families as well. The families have confidence in you and they feel like that they know you. That really supports their overall good feeling and the confidence that they have. Definitely. Thank you. What else are you doing well right now? People don't like to brag, but go ahead. What else are you doing well in your programs, or in your programs?
I oversee a number of schools in the programs, and I think what I see most strongly is the safety factors, the nurturing environment. Schools have embraced the program to provide a safe location for children who may not be in a safe location otherwise.
Right, and from what I'm hearing you say, it's a safe location emotionally and physically, right? And youth need that. They need both. Because if they don't feel safe emotionally in your programs and they don't feel safe physically in your programs, they're not going to engage. They're not going to thrive there. So that's why that's on the bottom of the pyramid, and it's really important to have that. Anything else? How do you support positive behavior? Do you have clear and consistent rules? Do you praise students and youth who are doing things well? All those good things? Yeah, I see a lot of that too. I won't have you mention them, or we won't go through them, but did you find areas that you could improve upon as well? Some challenges that may be there? Okay. Do you think this might be a helpful list for you going forward to look at and to say, wow, we're doing this and this and this well, but, you know, perhaps we could have more authentic leadership opportunities for our youth, right? Maybe you offer them a choice of colors, but you could offer them more input on activities, things like that. So I wanted to share this with you, not only to talk about positive youth development, but to provide you with a tool for you to really look at and use, if you so choose, to grow it. Okay? So youth development, positive youth development, supports all intended learning outcomes and learning opportunities, all of them. So if your intended outcome and learning opportunity is academic or if it's social and emotional, positive youth development practices support all intended outcomes. So when we're talking about outcomes, what youth outcomes are you striving for? So think about what youth outcomes are you striving for. So again, academic can come to mind. Corinne covered quite a few different outcomes. And here are some complementary outcomes. 21st century soft skills, which we have here, with a positive attitude to be better problem solvers. Opportunities for social emotional learning, which includes self-awareness and social awareness, and we'll be going through that. And academics, higher proficiencies in English language arts and STEM. But we're going to be focusing on, what I'm going to be focusing on is opportunities for social and emotional learning. The social and emotional learning competencies are defined as the cognitive, affective, and behavioral competencies necessary for a young person to be successful in work, school, and life. And Corinne already showed this slide from the collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning. But we're going to be looking at it a little bit closer. Self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So when I was growing up, we never talked about any of these things, ever. Although we talked about them as we need to behave, we need to get along, things like that. But we really didn't talk about these separate categories. But being competent in these areas will help you in school and in life and in work. So what are they exactly? Self-awareness, the ability to understand one's emotions and how they influence behavior. Self-management is the ability to calm oneself down when upset, to set goals and work toward them, and to manage and control emotions. How many of you have kiddos that have issues with self-management? Yeah, a lot. If they were able to control themselves, understand why they're getting upset, and manage themselves, would they be much more happy, calm, productive? Yeah, that's a really important skill to have. Social awareness, the ability to recognize what is appropriate in certain settings and to empathize with others. Responsible decision-making, the ability to make decisions that take into account social standards, consequences, and context. And relationship skills, the ability to communicate well, to listen and respond appropriately, and to negotiate conflict. So this is what these 5 interrelated social and emotional core competencies are. And as youth develop stronger social and emotional skills, their opportunities for learning and their depth of learning expands. In addition, the development of social emotional skills supports career readiness. And you see how that makes sense? So their opportunities for learning and their depth of learning expands as they become more competent with social emotional learning and competencies. So, how do you get your youth from A to Z? How do you get them to become more competent with some of these skills? So I've put three different paths here. We talked about one a little bit earlier, but I'm talking about intentional skill building, learning within common after-school activities, service learning, and the one Corinne touched on was project-based learning. And also working with the community, people in the community is huge. Service learning is one way to do that, and Corinne was focusing on internships as another way. So let's break this down. Let's look at intentional skill building. So research has identified 4 common elements in after-school and expanded learning programs that are most effective in developing skills. And this is by Durluck et al. In 2011. Activities are sequenced, learning is active, activities are focused on developing personal and social skills, and activities explicitly target specific skills and outcomes. The reason why I'm bringing this to you today is because when we're teaching youth math, do they know what's being taught? Do they know what the topic is? It's math. When we're teaching youth how to read, they understand they're being taught how to read today? Yep, they certainly do. But if we're working on some social emotional skills, such as relationship skills and self-management, do we typically talk to the students or the youth and talk about it? Today we're going to be working on self-management. Today we're going to be working on self-awareness. Today we're going to be working on relationship skills. We typically don't. And if you are explicit about it and you let them know that in addition to what they're learning, they're also going to be focusing on relationship skills. They have it in their mind, they have it as a focus, and they remember it better. So this is a planning tool that you can download and use. It really talks about and gives you areas to plan out the activities that are sequenced, active, focused, and explicit. So I just wanted to review a possible activity. So I'll give you a minute to read it. And see what you think about it. 7 sheets of paper in 7 minutes. It's something I'd like you to consider doing back at your school. Okay, first of all, does this look like it would be fun? It is. I've done it in a lot of workshops and always with adults, and you would be amazed at what they try to do with that paper. And also what happens during that whole process. But it's a lot of fun. Secondly, so let's look at the activities. We are asking you to work with people at your table, to utilize the 7 sheets of paper to create the highest standing structure possible. And I always tell people I want them to start by discussing the strategy. Always a good idea before you start ripping paper and manipulating it. You only have 7 pieces. And use trial and error to define your approach and pick a spokesperson. So a representative tells us what they did, and people get really competitive about how that tower, and if you walk by the table and the tower falls over, they're not very happy about it. So adults and youth really enjoy this activity. But I also tell them either I'm doing it for an icebreaker or because I'm trying to highlight a social emotional skill of developing relationships. So if you are at a table with 6 people that you've never met before, and you all of a sudden have to work together and do this, you think you'd get to know them pretty quickly? Think you'd start talking? Think that, and what might you find out about people? Who are the natural leaders in the group? Who has the STEM background? You know, it's fascinating to see people who start with geometric forms and build the tower out of triangular shapes, which are really solid, versus other people who really don't. You can learn a lot about observation, and you can learn a lot about each other during the process. It also breaks down those barriers that we have of, gee, I don't know you, and I'm kind of a little hesitant to talk about things, but once you've done something like this, it's that social and emotional component of building relationship for the day. And people are much more comfortable and apt to work together. So it's just a quick social emotional activity. And I encourage you to find and think about different ways that you can do that with your youth and with your staff. It's a good staff building activity, just to get them loosened up. So let's think. Did the activity follow the state guidelines? Was it sequenced? Did I tell you what to do? A, B, C, and D? Was it active? Were people moving around? Was it focused? It was focused on, this time, on relationship skills, and it was explicit. The explicit part was, I want you to build the tallest tower you can in 7 minutes with 7 pieces of paper. So that was a safe activity. It's pretty simple, but it's really effective way to follow some guidelines and make sure that your activities are engaging. But it's that explicit part that a lot of people don't do, and I didn't do for years. I'm a former educator. And I wasn't always explicit in my lesson plans and in what I was doing. And that explicitness really helps youth or adults, wherever you're working with, understand what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. Okay, so SEL and after-school activities is another pathway. What SEL opportunities are already present in common after-school activities? So how many of you have a chess club? Anybody? You people? Yep. And robotics, you already said robotics, which isn't up there. An art club. You guys have a girl or boy power. You have a lot of that in Chicago and Milwaukee, where they get together and talk about issues of the day. Any comic book design? And school store. So these are just the SEL, social emotional learning opportunities that are inherent in these after-school, common after-school activities. Responsible decision-making, relationship skills, self-awareness, social awareness, and of course, self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship skills. Somehow that little but what are some of your common after-school activities? You don't see yourself represented up there. What do you do after school every day? Cooking club? So what social emotional skills do you see cooking club?
Right, all of those.
Yeah, right. And if you are explicit on some days, you might say, we're going to be talking about responsible decision making today, along with math or whatever else you're doing. Or we're going to be talking about self-management because I'm letting you, I'm not letting you, you are going to be measuring and doing this, but you need to manage your body so that the flour is not all over the place, right? Or you're not taking the oil and doing whatever with it, right? What other activities are you doing after school?
There's some Lego things going on.
Lego League. So with Lego League, what do you see happening in Lego League? What could you connect to social emotional learning in Lego League? All of them. Does everybody do sports after school? basketball or do some type of activity. Yep. So what could you pull into social emotional learning into some of those activities?
Self-management.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And you probably talk about some of those organically, right? If you're going to be playing dodgeball, you're going to tell everybody, don't hit people in the head, right? Just don't do it. It's not a good idea. So that is a safety thing, but it's also self-management, right? So I'm asking you not to do it, and now you need to not do it, because that's really important. So I think organically you really do talk about a lot of these things, but you probably aren't really explicit about them. And you wouldn't want to be doing all of these things all the time because that gets too confusing. But if you really think about social emotional learning opportunities, they're inherent in so many things that you already do, and try to focus on some of them, because the more adept the youth get at them, the better they will be in life in general, in school, in life, and career. All right, so then our last area of focus is service learning. How many of you are involved with service learning opportunities? A few? Okay, great. So service learning is a methodology that connects after-school curriculum with identified community issues and needs. While you're engaging in projects that serve the community, youth can be exposed to different concepts of learning, including social and emotional learning, and develop a stronger sense of social responsibility and civic awareness. Service learning also provides opportunities for youth to be exposed to different careers. So, those of you who raised your hand, may I ask you, what are the service learning opportunities that you have at your sites? What are you doing?
We have our youth, they help around the schools, do a community cleanup day.
Okay.
They also, we have a teen group who goes and works at food pantry and
Awesome.
packs. And we also have a teen group who goes to an assisted living facility to play games and interact with the residents.
Wonderful. And when you're engaging in service learning, what are the outcomes you're hoping for with your youth?
Connecting to the community,
Definitely.
giving back, those public, how you were perceived in the public by what types of behaviors you need to do when you're with a group at the assisted living, how you should act versus when you're hanging out with your friends.
Definitely, and that really speaks to self-management, right? Definitely. And different relationships, because you're going to be relating differently to senior citizens than you would to your peers. And you would say and do things differently, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. So here are some other possible service learning projects. Improve, encourage recycling in the school and the community, clean up a local park, conduct a food or clothes drive for local families in need, and support residents of a local nursing home with visits and performances. So those are just some of the things that I can offer. Before I move on, and I have to finish up, but I just also like to talk about service learning. If you were involving your youth in understanding more about recycling, you could really do a whole wraparound project where you're taking them out, they're picking up the trash. Is that a service learning component? Are they beautifying your area? You bet. But what social emotional learning opportunities are available there? Relationship skills, social awareness. So when youth are out cleaning up the trash in your local area, they're really aware of what's going on in the community. They're seeing how people are treating the community, and they're caring about the community. You can also bring in STEM. You can take them to a recycling plant, and you can also bring in ELA, where they can research and write about what happens to trash when it leaves our community. And how much room do we have for trash in the next 50 to 100 years? Okay, and finally, for effective after-school social emotional skill building, changes in SL competencies are affected by the quality of programs talking about today is youth development, which is really the foundation for all intended learning outcomes, and social emotional learning. So social emotional learning, it's important for it to be explicit at times so that you know what they're really focusing on and what your hopeful outcomes or expected outcomes are. However, if you have youth that are only coming to your programs once a week, any intended outcomes that you have for them, of course, will be affected by that. So you want to participate in quality improvement activities, conduct regular youth satisfaction surveys, and bolster youth participation by identifying what you like and do not like about the program and making changes to meet your needs. Because the bottom line is quality program, and any changes that you want to affect with the youth will take place only if the youth are there, right? They have to come and they have to consistently come. So everything that I've talked about today is really important, and you can implement it in your sites, but your youth need to be there in order for it to be effective. All right, I am over my time, so finishing up there. Any, I guess no quick questions for you. Component. Yeah. Tell me right up if you have any questions. But I encourage you to reach out to the people in your community for service learning projects. I encourage you to use the checklist to take a look at yourself and see what you're doing well and what you can improve on.